every single person is going to find out for themselves the moment that they die. I don't really need to convert anybody, because the greatest healing that's going to occur in your life is the moment you leave your body.
Hi, thank you, Peter, for being with us. We have Peter Panagore here to tell us about his near-death experiences and a little insight around that. Thank you so much for being with us, Peter.
Thanks for asking me, Katie, and being so patient with me.
Absolutely. Anytime. You're going to have to be patient with me. There's so many questions that I want to ask you, but I'd love to start with a little bit about your background, and I'll let you go from there.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Katie. Hi, everybody. So I'm Peter Panagore. I'm a two-time near-death experiencer. I went to Yale Divinity School after my first near-death experience, which entirely changed my life, to study mysticism so that I might be able to come to some kind of understanding of myself. And then I got talked into by the dean to becoming an ordained United Church of Christ minister, which I'm no longer part of that denomination, but the ordination sticks. So I grew up Greek Orthodox and Roman Catholic as a kid, attended both churches, not every Sunday, but most Sundays, one after the other. And I went to Catholic high school, studied the Bible, a gospel every year in my Catholic high school, all guys school, went to undergraduate school at a state school. I dropped out of the Coast Guard Academy before I even matriculated. I was like, no, can't do this. And went to state school, studied English, went to Montana State University for a year as an exchange student, which is why I was in Canada where I was ice climbing and I died. I went off to, after my death, I went to Yale, like I said, to study mysticism, became an ordained United Church of Christ minister, served community churches on the coast of Maine and the coast of Connecticut for 18 years, was recruited into television, had a TV show for 15 years, 30 million views a year. It was a spot in the morning just before the weather. Now it's time for Reverend Peter Panagore and Daily Devotions. And it was on it was on 2 NBC. I never got to say that. I got to hear that all the time. I had 2 minutes every morning just before the weather to tell an inspirational story in what ended up as a 91-year-old 501c3 nonprofit when it closed. I held it for the last 15 years, and it was great. It was a good gig. Loved it. Worked a lot in New York City. Worked with Hallmark Channel and Bravo and Odyssey Networks and Faith and Values Media and the National Council of Churches. But you were alluding to what is true, which is that I hid inside the church. I was on this very long quest, and I'm still on this quest, just to be clear. It is not fait accompli. I was hiding inside the church because I figured it was a place I could learn to write, I could serve people, I could be a professional meditator, like, oh, the Reverend's meditating. Oh, it's okay, he's a reverend. Oh, it's on the clock? Oh, it's okay, he's praying. So that was all intentional. I was the weirdo at the time as doing yoga, though. Doing yoga in the sanctuary. People are like, oh my God, the devil.
Yeah.
So
when people don't understand quite what it is, it's a little, it's scary.
Yeah, it was, my denomination was eventually accepting of my eccentricities. But I was hiding inside the church because I had this compulsion as a result of my first NDE to serve people and to pursue the interior life, because I came to learn that through my studies that the interior practice has a complementary exterior practice. And when the exterior practice is practiced with the interior practice, they become this circle, and one feeds the other. And so I chose a life of service. I was going to become an architect in the family business. I actually got into graduate school in architecture as well. But I went to divinity school, where the dean allowed me this 3-year independent study. Yale does not teach mysticism. It has classes on mysticism throughout the university, but she also hired a professor to give me an independent study. So I did this 3-year independent study, but he helped me during my second to last semester where I was preparing to do a dissertation. So I didn't intend to be a minister. I was going to hide out as a university professor. I was beginning the process of getting my doctorate, applying for it, talking to professors and that sort of stuff. And she talked me into this, becoming ordained. So I stayed as a minister for all these years. And then when I went to TV, I began my separation from the denomination. And then when I ended my TV career, I left the denomination. And so now I serve as a chaplain in a maximum security prison in the state of Maine, where it's quite a wonderful challenge.
And so do you do daily things, or you go as people need you? Do you have offer just services weekly? Is it
I don't. I am available. I'm sort of an administrator for 14 religions, ranging from Santeria, Brujeria, Wiccan, to 2 types of Christian, 2 types of Islam, a couple of different native groups, and others. And I serve as a helper to them. I also do a lot of counseling with the staff and with the residents, many of whom are in for a very, very long time, some of whom have transformed their minds and recognized the heinousness of the crime they committed and are actively pursuing high school diplomas, college degrees, graduate degrees, and even PhDs. The prison where I work is based on the Scandinavian model of prison systems, and it is recognized as having the least recidivation rate in the nation by 40 percentage points.
Whoa.
And so it's effective because of the education and the treatment of the residents, which we call the residents, as human beings, which is the reason why I went there. I would not be able to work at a prison that couldn't see every human as a human.
Mm-hmm.
And so my interior life, my long practice of interior is complemented by my exterior, and it creates this where the outer and the inner become more closely one. So that's kind of my background without talking about my NDEs in specific.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when you grew up, I remember hearing you had a little glimpse
I did.
into I don't know what you want to call it, the other side, what people would say angel, guide, higher being, or something. Can you say a little bit about that?
Sure. There are people who I think this is just an educated guess. I think that there are people who come into the world, who are born into the world, who have a natural tendency, maybe it's biological, maybe it's cosmic, toward a lengthening and increasing connection to the other side. So instead of it just shutting off, there's this continuous thread. So I seem to have been one of those people. When I was 5 years old, I had my first mystical experience. And in brief, what happened was I was in a tree. I was 5 years old. I was going to scare my sisters. That's what I was doing in the tree. I was hiding, and I was going to scare my 2 sisters. And it was like September-ish, and it was a maple tree. And I wasn't very high up because I was 5 years old. Okay, but I'm in this maple tree, and the leaves start flipping back and forth, and I become mesmerized by the two-tone of color. And there's like 500 leaves around me, and they're all flipping in the breeze, and I get mesmerized by this, and I dropped into this mesmer state,
Uh-huh.
hypnotic state or something where I became very still. And as I became very still, this sound erupted behind me and outside of me, sort of in my back, but very loud, like the volume of Niagara Falls, just roar and roar. And as this roar is going off, it entered into me and snatched me. And I got pulled out of myself, entered into this like all brass section. It's like 500 trumpet players and a couple of tuba players.
Uh-huh.
And I get sucked up this tube, and I can see the tree. First I could see the boy. I could always sort of see the boy. But it wasn't like a lens that focuses on one thing. It was a kind of multi-focus at the same time. So I leave, I see the tree, I see my house, I see our city, I'm up into the edge of the atmosphere, and we hit the edge of the atmosphere, I could see the curvature of the earth. And I wasn't afraid because I trusted this entity. I didn't have any choice. I didn't choose this. I didn't try to astral project. I just was snatched.
Yeah.
And so I traveled up this tube and through the edge of the atmosphere. And on the other side of the atmosphere, it wasn't space. It was what sometimes people call the void. It was this immense black velvety space where there was nothing, and it was infinite. And I was encased inside this angelic being, this guide, this consciousness, this entity, which was benevolent. And it was like I was in a big bubble. And I didn't have a physical body. I had an astral body. I was made of another substance, light, but I could see the little human boy down below, because I could see down the tube, and I recognized that I was not the boy. I'd always been this other thing, and I was safe inside this bubble, and then the bubble opened, and I got sucked out like a vacuum into the void. And in the void, I still had form and I want to say substance, but it wasn't molecules. But the whole expanse was wisdom itself, wisdom, compassion, beauty, and a whole bunch of other things that I can only express by the feelings of joy and wonder. And then I was shoved back in. So I'm inside this bubble, and as I'm in the bubble, the darkness on the exterior comes in with me, behind me, and there's I describe it as like a countertop, like you're in a small town store, and there's a counter between you and the other side, but it's sort of some kind of barrier. And the divine being started speaking to me. The whole thing, on the outside, it was speaking to me as well. It's speaking joy, speaking love. All the things that I was experiencing was sort of like words being spoken, but there was no language. It was the essence of all of those things penetrating me. So I'm inside the bubble. It's behind the counter, and it transforms itself into 10,000 different shapes and colors and beings, and it just keeps changing and changing and changing. The entire time it's speaking to me, it's always the same, but it's always different. And so it's transforming and transforming and transforming, and it's speaking to me. And what it said to me was that you belong to me. You have an agreement with me in this lifetime to work for me. You have this is our agreement. And as it was saying this to me, I said, oh yeah, that's right. I do. I wasn't thinking it. I just had the expression of the memory inside of me where it became obvious to me that that's what I did. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Okay, I'm good. But I wasn't the little boy. I was so much more capable. I didn't have similar to my NDE, my first NDE and my second, but the first one in particular, I didn't have a brain to comprehend, but I had my soul itself was the essence of my intelligence and my emotional life and my identity. But my identity was a higher being. So once this understanding was implanted in me, or I was allowed to remember, I was shown the promise that I had made, I was sent back. So this bubble the darkness, as I leave, the darkness leaves the bubble, and the bubble is the consciousness of the angel itself, and back down that tube and slammed into the body.
Mm-hmm.
And I became a different kid. I ran into the house to tell my mom. I woke the baby, basically, and got in trouble. Learned never got a punishment for waking the baby. Was telling my mom that I was going to be a priest because that was the only thing my 5-year-old brain could comprehend that was a religious person. And but I still had to dust the dining room in silence. Because if I was going to be a priest, I wasn't going to have a wife, and I better know how to dust. So that was my first experience. And then I had I had another when I was 6. I had another when I was in late high school, early college. And then the year before I died, I had 2 in one night. And all of it in hindsight. Now, going through all of these experiences, they made sense individually because they always left. Every mystical experience leaves a person with a little bit of noetic understanding, is the way William James talks about it in the Varieties of Religious Experience. It's this wisdom, but it's inexpressible. So it's noetic understanding, but it's you can't say it. You can only be it. And so I didn't understand how they all linked together. I just knew it was outside the norm. And when I died the first time, all of it fell in order as preparatory for helping me survive emotionally and psychologically, and understand what my job was that was given to me in my NDE, my first NDE. So it was all preparatory work, laying the groundwork. I didn't know that at the time. It was only in hindsight that I could see that. And it set me on a path of pursuit after the experience I had in high school. I induced it with LSD, a triple hit of LSD, and had a God experience. But after that experience, I learned how to meditate through what's now called centering prayer, because my Catholic high school was near the monastery where this was developed. So I began my meditation life 45, 50 years ago. And it was the steadying factor that allowed me to immediately following my first NDE to rest in the peace inside of me, so as not to, in part take my own life, but also in part be at peace while I'm in this crazy world. Because in comparison, this is not a hellish place. In my first NDE, I went through a hell of my own making, wherein I judged myself. I'll talk about that in a minute. But this place here is like a beautiful hellscape in comparison to the divine heaven or heavens or afterlife or whatever you want to call it, because there's no language over there. There's lots of words on this side to describe it metaphorically in all these different cultures and different points of, like the famous elephant in the room. I feel with the blind people, I feel the trunk, I feel the tail. That's what it is. It's all of that and more. So, and the language can never express the inexpressible, because it's the divine's ineffable, unspeakable. So what I will say is that one of the reasons why I went to divinity school was to comprehend, to apply language to that thing for which there is no language, so that I could understand it in such a way as I could survive in the world as this beautiful hellscape. So this beautiful hellscape is broken from the beginning of the universe to the end of the universe, alpha and omega, and everything in between. It is thinly veiled light, but the veil creates reality. And so it's this combination of brokenness and light at the same time. And that after my first NDE, at that point, I don't know how many years I'd been meditating. I'd have to add them up, 5 or 6 years, something like that. Maybe longer at that point. I'd have to figure it out. Anyway, so that meditative capacity that I developed inside myself gave me the avenue to return to heaven here now. So people ask me, how do I raise my vibration? And I say that's not the problem. You're not trying to raise anything. Historically around the world, in all of the mystical traditions, Kung Fu, Taoism, Kung Fu, Judaism in the West Wall, the Sufi Sufi dervishes, everybody practices a variation of non-attachment to self. And the practice of non-attachment to self through breath and meditative practices, physical, mental combinations, quiet the attachment to the egoic self, which of its own nature is the block to the light. And so when the attachment is quieted, the light just naturally asserts itself. It just shows itself. And so after my first NDE, because I already had enough experience with meditation to understand the place of silence and quietude, I would rest inside that space in order to survive the exterior world. Because like all NDEers, we come back knowing that our body is not where our consciousness arises. And so there's this shattering egoic experience just in having an NDE wherein you know that you're not your body, because up until that point, most people, the vast majority of people, their entire identity is what they perceive themselves to be. And now suddenly you don't have that anymore.
I've heard people say they still feel like themselves, like they have like their personality or something, but just no attachment to it. So did you have that sense? It's hard to describe, right? We're using our human terms to describe something that's, like you said, ineffable. But yeah, did you still feel like you had your type of personality, or
Unavoidably.
in a sense?
Yeah, unavoidably so, because I came back to my own brain, and my brain didn't become something else. I came back with gifts and that sort of stuff, and some of them were physical, but that's essentially my brain was exactly the same as when I left. And that means I came back to ADHD and dyslexia and all the emotional stuff all my emotions didn't disappear. My historic traumas, they didn't vanish. They're still there, but I had this constant experience of being above myself, always above myself while inhabiting this physical form. And when I first came back, and forever, ever after, when I look at my own hand, I know it's not me. I look at it like, oh, look at that weird thing. I feel like I'm I'm an artificial intelligence that lives in the cloud, that has an app downloaded into a biological robot. That's kind of the experience of it. And a part of my interior practice was to try to unite my exterior self and my interior self, and they weren't divided because obviously they were connected, but to create a larger tube or tunnel through which I could become more higher self here than I came back as. And you asked about names, and it's funny that nobody's ever asked me about this. So I do this all the time. People are really attached to their names. My name is difficult to pronounce. My last name is difficult to pronounce because
I had to ask you before.
Of course, it's because it's a made up name. My grandfather was an illegal alien. He got arrested. He escaped. He eventually got his citizenship in the 1940s, and he had changed his name so he wouldn't get caught. He got his name back, but there's a whole generation of us who were born under the fake name, and the fake name sounds Italian, but it's made up Greek, because he was trying to not be really Greek because he didn't want to have the OS at the end, and or AIS or whatever it is, and so.
What a fun history for your name.
It's really fun. There's 11 of us in the world. And so
oh my God.
It's funny. But people get really upset if you mispronounce their names or if you forget their names. I don't care. I don't care. And so I have a whole lot of friends, and all my friends many of my friends call me by different names. So because either they give me a name or I tell them, so I go by, depending on Peter Pan, Pete, Petey, Peter, Pierre, Pedro, Petros, Petro, Simon, Rock, Pebble, Cephas. Because I'm not attached to my name. So in the prison, there's this one guy who came up to me and he was Spanish speaking and he said, so what's your name? I said, my name is Pedro. And he's like, okay. So now he calls me Pedro. He's the guy who calls me Pedro. There are people who call me Pete. There are people who call me Peter. I'm going to introduce a whole bunch of other names as I go along. And because it's really fun for me, because I know that I am not this guy. And so my name, when I was dead the first time, I heard and understood the name of my soul being called into being. The essence of myself in its original nature was an expression of the divine being that had a name, but the name it's not like, so every object that we have, here's my, we apply a name to the object, right?
Yeah.
That's not the essence of my being. My essence of my being is my name. There's no separation between these two things, because the essence of the divine thought that brings me into existence is the substance of my being, and that's my name. So many NDEers, as far as I know, my friends, none of us believe in our own bodies,
Mm-hmm.
and although we do come back to our brains. And so if a person is bipolar before they go, chances are they're bipolar when they come back. And there are miracles that occur, but generally speaking, you come back to the body that you left.
Right.
With an understanding that you're not it, which is very shattering psychologically. So
Mm-hmm.
it takes up to 10 years or so for a person to integrate these two experiences, living here and the experience of the transcendent self.
Because I remember you describing coming back to your body, and it was like coming from this huge expansive awareness, just corkscrewed into this tiny little, like, it is how you described it, feeling like. So it's hard to imagine,
Can't.
with that.
Can't imagine it, but you can experience it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole practice of the interior life. So it can't be grasped. We can imagine it, but our imagination always falls short, just like our language does.
Mm-hmm.
But by the quieting of the attachment to the self, the direct experience of the divine energy, of the whatever you want to call the Shakti, the Chi, the Holy Spirit, whatever this energy form is by many names, the container in which we live can be opened enough to let more light in, to bring heaven here now, which is what Jesus was always talking about. He was always talking about bringing the light in. You are the light of the world. Make your eyes single and your body will be filled with light. Go into your closet and pray. These are all interior practices.
And in today's world, the way we live our lives, it's so hard. People make time for it if they go to church, or maybe they pray before they go to bed, but it's not enough. Like you said, you really have to spend that time just to where you are just not thinking about yourself. I think I've heard you describe it as it's an inward thing where you are like all the answers are just, you have it all in here, right? And you can come back to that at any time, and you just have to really practice it. Just losing that attachment to yourself, not thinking about yourself, what's going on, all these things. Just let yourself be in that space. Does that take a lot of time to get to?
Really?
Just depends for yeah.
Well, yes and no, I guess I should say. I said not really, and on a daily basis, it's 20 minutes a day for me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's 20 minutes a day for me since 1977, and some days much longer than that. So it's consistency that matters. The consistency of the practice over a long extended period That's how the space is created. Imagine if you have a hammer and a chisel, and you're a Neanderthal, and you've come across this cave, and you want to make it bigger, and you don't have a hammer and a chisel because they didn't have hammers and chisels, but you have a rock that's harder than the other rocks,
Right.
and so you get this harder rock, and you're in a sandstone cave, and so you chip away and you make the space bigger. It takes you a long time, piece by piece by piece, and eventually the cave becomes bigger. And that once the cave becomes bigger, there's more air. We'll call light air this time. So there's more air inside, and that's kind of how the meditation life works. And so 20 minutes a day is what I practice. It's as important to me as having breakfast or coffee in the morning, probably coffee more than breakfast, because not practicing it, it leaves me thirsty. It leaves me thirsty. And so I like to satisfy my thirst by meditating. And then what happens is that over the long term, the bigger the space becomes, the easier it is to do because the brain is trained. So it doesn't get harder, it gets easier. And not only does it get easier, the light itself becomes reality. And that's really for me, the most sustaining thing is that when I first came back from my first NDE, entering into the interior space, my space of my rest was, maybe a softball. But over years of practice, now it's the size of the room I'm sitting in. And so the place in which I rest becomes bigger, and the intensity of its central location becomes like a river of peace. And so even in bad, hard times, of which I also suffer, I have a family, I have kids, I get grandkids, I know what it's like to, have a hard time. So I'm not immune to any of that. But this knowledge that came back with me, and I came back with an extra dose, so it was easier for me than it is for most people. So with this extra dose, it leaves me with a continual knowledge of my original self, of a continual knowledge. And it's not up here. I'm not like thinking about it. It's an experiential expansion of my soul inside myself and the world. And because of that, it left me, my original NDE left me with no fear of death. So when my second NDE happened, when I now 10 years ago, died of a heart attack, widowmaker, like 2 to 3% of people who have widowmaker heart attacks survive.
Whoa.
And so I died in the middle of that on my getting transported to the hospital. I live in a rural space. I was already outside my golden hour before I even left in the ambulance. And then it's an hour and a half trek to the and then it was prep time. So I was I have parts of my heart that are dead, that have been, there's a fiber that has been grown back in place, but I died on the way. But I wasn't afraid. I was like, today's my day. I didn't realize it. I was like, okay, I get to go home today. I've been waiting for 20 years. I've been praying for my death every day. Take me today. As I was dying the second time, I was at a yoga class, and I had a heart attack it was hot yoga, which I'm not a fan of, by the way. No offense to the hot yoga fans out there, but in my yoga practice, prana makes me hot. When no one else is sweating, I'm like flinging sweat across the room because the prana is burning. And so, but I went to this yoga class. I'll spare all the details why I was there that day. But it was run by my friend in a community I live in a resort town. So half the people in the community of the yoga that day were people I knew, and the other half were summer people. But I had this heart attack. And as I was lying outside in the grass, thinking that I was Mr. Superfit, like at the time I ran 5K every day and did yoga all the time and lifted weights. And so I was like tip top shape. And I thought to myself, this isn't going to kill me. I'm in great shape. And I thought it got worse and worse. And I thought, I should at least try to stay alive for my kids. So I tried to get up off the grass to get in my car to drive to the urgent care center. And I couldn't sit up. And that's at that point I thought, Oh, oh well, I tried. And then the teacher came out and got me to the urgent care center. Anyway, so I chose to come back the second time. I chose to come back the first time during my NDE for my parents. My dad's now deceased. My mom has just entered memory care. And I came back the second time for my granddaughter. Now I have other grandkids, but this particular one at the time, there was domestic abuse involved, and we had just rescued my daughter and the granddaughter who has just been born, and they needed me, and I couldn't. I saw her life in the same way or similar way that I saw my parents' lives when I was dead. I saw the parallel of their lives with me and without me. I saw the parallel of my granddaughter's life with me and without me, and the without me wasn't terrible. I mean, it wasn't great. It was better with me. It was like, so it was without me was better and with me was best. So it wasn't like poor and great. The differentiation wasn't as huge as it was with my parents, but it was present. And so I chose to come back for my kids too, and not to exclude them, because I saw that they weren't really ready for me to leave either. My wife and I, she already knew that I told her when I finally came out to her about my NDE, and then she witnessed a whole bunch of these mystical experiences that I had after my first NDE. They didn't end; they continued to get more intense, and so she knew who I was. And I told her that first legitimate chance I get, meaning I'm not going to take my own life. First legitimate chance I get, I'm out of here.
Right.
And so she's glad I'm still here. Me too. Because you know, a lot of good things have happened, but no fear of death it's freeing. It is.
And that didn't come to you. I mean, when you were 5, I mean, that was a different experience, but more so when you experienced your ice climbing incident, right? I mean, because in those moments, were you scared of death? I mean, you took on this trek with a climber in Canada, and I know you had mostly, I mean, prepared the best way, right, that you could be.
So I was ice climbing in Alberta, Canada, and died of exposure. And it was my first ice climb, but it wasn't my first wilderness experience. I started in Boy Scouts when I was 11 and been camping most of my life with my family. And so wilderness experience was really a huge part of my life. I spent all of my vacations through college backpacking in mountainous regions. Like, I had a week off, I'm going backpacking. I got 3 weeks off, I'm going backpacking. So, and I did a lot of rock climbing. And in that particular year that I died, I spent a month before I went to school on exchange in several different deep wilderness areas in Montana, just backpacking around. And then all my weekends that I could. So what I'm saying is that I was not inexperienced in all weathers. I was also in the National Ski Patrol. So cold weather, my thing. So we went on this ice climb. We went snow caving, and it was just across the border in British Columbia for a week. We went snow caving, and then at the end of this trip, we were going to do this ice climb, and we did, and we were well prepared, except for I couldn't find a second ice axe, as you alluded to, and I ended up with an ice hammer and an ice axe. And I talked my climbing partner Tim into, I could do this. And I did. Okay. So I did do the climb, but because the axe is significantly longer and actually has a strap that you can set the axe in the ice and let go and hang on the strap to rest. The hammer does not have that. It's much shorter. So the swing is shorter. And there was no way to rest on the hammer. And so my climb took almost twice as long as everybody else's, which meant that by the time we reached the top of the final pitch, it was a 3-pitch climb. The sun was setting, and we were not prepared for overnight. And we weren't the only team on the ice that day. There were other teams. We were the last team to arrive, the last team to start, but we were not the only team. It's a world famous climb. People come from everywhere to go climb this thing. And so we're at the top of the final pitch, the third pitch. Sun goes down, temperature drops about 30 degrees in like a snap of a finger. And we'd been sweating all day, and ice was dropping down. Ice falls down your back if you get a little gap there. And so we were wet. We were dressed correctly, but we were still sweaty and wet. And so when the temperature dropped, hypothermia set in within minutes. And then it progressed throughout the night as we fought our way, traversing in the dark, to get off this mountain, because we knew that, because of my first aid ski patrol wilderness thing, that we were going to die. I knew that we stayed where we were going to die. And we decided that since that was true, if we were going to die, we were going to die trying to save ourselves. And so that's what we did. And as the night progressed, the hypothermia advanced, frostbite, nose freezing, cheeks and eyeballs. My eyeballs were like freezing cold. But the worst thing is that it stole my capacity to think. So it made my muscles difficult to move. So I became a lot less coordinated. Tim was in the same situation. And hypothermia steals your capacity to make rational decisions. Mm-hmm. That's just what happens. So we traversed across this mountain down a pitch, and terrible things happened. Difficult things happened. We kept overcoming. We finally get to this last pitch, and it's sometime way after midnight. I don't have any idea what time it was because I didn't really care. And I was scared out of my mind. Okay, so I was petrified, but I was using my capacity for compartmentalization to hold my fear in a separate section of myself, and kept my mind. And Tim did the same thing. That's one of the reasons why we got along so well, is because he was extraordinarily level-headed in dangerous situations. That week before that we had been snow caving, there were other dangerous situations that neither of us lost our heads in, which helped me understand that I could trust my life to him. Mm-hmm. And that's what ice climbing is. That's what wilderness travel is, especially in the wintertime. You're trusting your life with this other person. And so he was in the same situation. We finally get down to the last rappel, and the top of the last rappel, and he's off to my left, and he's clipped into the mountain. So this particular section is where there are pins in the mountain with carabiners and straps and carabiners on the end of that, so that you can climb this rock face and descend with ease, so you don't have to set lines up. So it's easy to climb this thing. And so we're clipped into the mountain, so it means we're not going to fall for the first time all night. And I had the rope, and Tim was off to my left, and the ledge was as big as, I don't know, my desk. Yeah. And then it was around the corner was the descent, and the rope got caught somewhere up above us, and a cleft, or a little cleft in the rock, and I couldn't move the rope. The rope was stuck. And so then our hypothermia continued to advance, and eventually, cutting a long story shorter, I died. At the end, I was falling asleep. And then this last time I was falling asleep, I thought, oh, I'm falling asleep again. But each time I fell asleep, I would lose consciousness. Deep, dark sleep, like no dreaming, just asleep, solid asleep. And this time, as I fell asleep, I woke up, and I wondered, what is this? And the biggest thing I'm going to say, the difference between all of my mystical experiences preceding my first near-death experience, my soul was attached to my body. No matter where I was taken or what was happening, there was, the Bible calls it the silver cord, but whatever you want to call it, my soul was attached to my body. But in my near-death experience, there was a severing that took place. My soul was not attached to my body. When it first began, I was sort of in front of my physical form, still attached to my body. And in front of me was a vast, dark, velvet blackness that had shape and form, and I think the shape and form was because there was a pinprick of light at this impossible distance, like looking at a star in the far distance. And that star, that was the same angelic being, and I watched it rush toward me and fill my vision and faster than the speed of light. It was suddenly in front of me, communicating to me, I'm coming to take you. It's time for you to leave. It's your time, or something like that, non-linguistic. And so I thought, I don't have any idea what's going on here. Even though I'd been out of my body a bunch of times, every single time I'd been out of my body before, the snatching I couldn't see the snatching coming.
Yeah.
It just was like, okay, you're out of your body. This time I see the being coming toward me, and I'm like, this is different. This is weird. I don't know what's going on. And so I put up my will of resistance. I'm not going anywhere. But it just snatched me anyway, just plucked me like a flower. And I was then enveloped inside of this entity again, who I knew, but was much more powerful now. It was as if my detachment from myself allowed me to perceive more of its strength and might, its intelligence and beauty. And it was two things at once. It was this independent entity, which was gigantic compared to me, but it was simultaneously in it. When I was in it, my perception of it included infinity. There was like this long fiber optic cable that connected it to infinity, and it was infinity itself, and yet somehow reduced in order to be in this place. So it was bilocated, or it was quantumly entangled, or whatever metaphor you want to use. It was two things at once. And I was a body of light in the space of comfort, and we sped off back the direction it came. And I landed in this vast expanse where a whole lot of things happen. I'm going to be very brief about this. There's a lot of details. It's been a long time, where I understood myself to be my true self, that I'd never really been a human, that I experienced a state of union, of beauty, truth, love, and joy. I was expanded. I went through a hell of my own making. All the pain that I gave to everyone in my life, I experienced their pain from their point of view. I wasn't judged. I judged myself in comparison to infinite love, from which it was very easy to see I was teeny, teeny, tiny in my little tiny brokenness in comparison to the immensity of welcome and beauty. And once I stopped looking at myself, once I stopped identifying myself with my pain, the pain that I had caused, rather, and once I recognized love itself, once I turned my eye to the divine, I was welcomed, like in a way that was so expansive that I saw my original nature being called into being. I experienced multiple of my previous lives. I saw from the outside many of my lives. I was entangled with the field of oneness of being. I saw the creation of our universe in its not like the Big Bang, but like the structure of the light that permeates all that there is, and not just me, but like the whole universe, stars and galaxies. And I was shown Earth. I saw my parents' parallel lives. I saw that every human being was made of the same divine essence of love, of a shining golden light inside of every being, that was clouded from their eyes beneath, as Islam talks about the 70,000 veils. There's like 70,000 veils over everybody's eyes. They can't see the light to the intensity which I could see it, which was plain as day to me. And I experienced that all of the love of all of the universe that created everything there is, everything is woven of this love, and all the other universes, all of that, and the infinite itself. I was the most beloved that ever was. And I know this is a contradiction, that I was unique in that, except for that everybody was unique in the same thing. And the word unique means there's only one. And I know that this is right. So I was the only one, but then again, so was everybody else. And because the light itself is infinite, and it loves in a capacity that is we can't understand it here, but it came back with me enough. A thimbleful of it came back with me enough to transform me and my life, and give the direction of the path, of my interior path, and my life of service. and my compulsion to talk about it, even though I kept it a secret for decades. It was leaking out all over the place anyway. But after I saw my parents' parallel lives and experienced this unconditional, infinite love of healing all of that nothing is lost to the divine infinite love. Nothing. There's not a bacteria, not a star system. Everything is enfolded back into the love itself. When the universe, finally, whatever it does, expands till it dissipates or ceases to exist or whatever happens.
Yeah.
And then I made a choice to come back to life because I saw my parents' lives and recognized that the duration of a single lifetime is nothing. It's snap of the fingers. And I'd lived many, 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 many previous lifetimes, and none of them were me. So I came back with this knowledge of my previous lives. I entered into 2 of them, and I'm not really interested in who I was as a lizard or a human being, male, female, whatever, because none of them are me. I am this multi-level divine being in adoration of the Creator who left me with the singular goal of unity again. And so what's better than the bliss of all being? Nothing for me. So I came back from that experience. I chose to come back. And when I was brought back to my body again, as you described, I was crushed down and injected in and my brain came online like a booting up computer, or like an old, like a 1919 tube radio, right? Right.
Yeah.
Takes a little while to get going. And then my hearing came online, and then I heard screaming and screaming and screaming, and I didn't, unintelligible to me. I opened my eyes. My partner, Tim, was shaking me and trying to like, don't die, don't die, don't die. And I thought you were dead. And I was. He was an atheist, so I never told him. And we descended, the rope came free. And this is what I think happened after thinking about it a lot. The more I pulled on the rope previously, the tighter the jam became. And I'd fallen asleep a bunch of times. So I'd fallen several times. And I think that this time I must have fallen a little further out. And so the rope, so I was kind of off the cliff a little bit. My body wasn't, so I was, and I don't think I've ever explained this before. If this is the edge, if this is the ledge we were on, this is the wall. I was falling here, but this time I was kind of like over here. And I was on the edge, and I'm pretty sure that Tim unhooked himself. He had to. Another thing, he had to unhook himself and put himself in danger, mortal danger, to come and try to pull me back up. But he was afraid he was going to die too, and he would have. We were alone. There was nobody coming to rescue us. Wow. The rope came free. We descended. We treated for hypothermia. Terrible things happened on the way back to Bozeman, and I was an entirely different person. I was inhabiting this body, but everything I could see, even Tim, my atheist friend, emoted light of divine origin. Everything, and everything was simultaneously illuminated and beautiful and absolutely ugly to me, because nothing was of the purity of the divine being itself. Everything, I know that in Christian tradition, they call it the corruption. And that's such a negative word. But it's not bad. It's not a terrible thing. It's just not the fullness of the divine presence. Why is there suffering in the world? Well, because if there was no suffering in the world, and it's not just humans, all right, it's chickadees and brown bats and sperm whales and everything. And it's not just us. It's the whole universe. The whole thing. For it to exist, it can't be the purity of divine being, because in the purity of divine being, there is no negativity. There's no brokenness. There's only wholeness. There's only wellness in being. There's no contrast. And here, for this place to even exist, there has to be this contrast. The essence of its structure is this separation from the fullness of the divine. And so it ends up with this, I was walking yesterday And suddenly my knee started hurting and I didn't do anything to it. Like I didn't twist it, I didn't fall. I'm like, what the heck is this thing? And I said like, okay, I'm going to walk it out. And it wasn't a big pain. It was just like, why is that thing hurting in my knee?
Mhm.
And that's kind of the way life is you're walking along doing your thing and
Uh,
suddenly, something terrible happens to you.
Such a good analogy. Yeah.
And then you keep going until you die. And as for death, lots of people are afraid of death. It's the reason why people cling to life, why people
Yeah.
are greedy, right? So they're trying to greed, whether it doesn't matter whether it's money or power or food, it's grasping.
Right.
Because it's so unstable here. And also no one wants to die. Everybody's afraid, except for the 20 million of us in the United States and Canada and all over the world, hundreds of millions of us now, who died and came back. We're not afraid.
And has it something to do? It's all about attachments, right? I mean, attachment to ourself and who we are, and then our families. I know a lot of people say, like I've interviewed some people before who say, they didn't want to come back. They knew it was a kind of a trick. Like that's not me. I wasn't that person. Even though they had a great life and a family and everything, they wanted to stay over there. And they had and so then I've gotten people who say, well, I don't want to, I can't, I don't want to forget about my kids. I don't want to leave, so and I can relate to this. So how do you get around? Have you had some of those questions before thrown at you? Do you believe that eventually we will make it to this, to heaven, to this other side?
Watch out. Watch out. It's coming for everybody.
Well, and then I get lots of people who say, and I'm blown away by the amount of people, and it seems to be a gaining ground. The people who believe that it's a trick don't go into the light because have you heard this?
Oh yeah, yes, and it has root in some of the ancient Christian literature, and in certain forms of Gnosticism, where the Yahweh is the trickster who creates reality, but not the divine being, and keeps recycling you through here is kind of like a torture. Okay, yeah, I would say that those people who claim that have never died. Because if they had died, they would not be saying that. Because none of us who die say that. None of us do. We all, even those of us who only go into a hellish state and come back, they come back transformed. Everybody gets the NDE that they need. So everybody's NDE is different. Every person is different, but we all come back with this transformation. And here's the thing: even in their belief system of the light being the trickster, don't go to the light. You're going to die. They're going to die. And then they're going to discover for themselves. And I've never been an evangelist about this. I talk about it, but I really don't care if anybody believes me. I did care if people thought I was insane. I didn't want that because that's,
Sure.
that kind of about depowering the capacity of my existence in the world and the effect I could have. But I don't care if anybody believes me because every single person is going to find out for themselves the moment that they die. I don't really need to convert anybody because the greatest healing that's going to occur in your life is the moment you leave your body. People talk about healing here and I want to become whole and enlightened. And it is nothing in comparison. It's a smidge. Somebody described it to me this week as it's kindergarten for everybody, and the greatest mystics of all are like at the top of the kindergarten class, but it's still kindergarten class. It's not, on the other side, it's like having, 15 master's degrees and 400 PhDs and having the capacity to hold all of that knowledge and understanding. The comparison it's impossible to really accurately describe. But at the moment of death, people often get collected by those who had loved them, who've already passed on. And if you've ever watched any of the videos that are now, I watched this hospice nurse And she talks
Julie?
a lot about it. Julie, yeah, she's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah, she's great. And other video clips of, I saw this clip the other day. Somebody was in the near, their mom was dying, and mom's arms are upreached. It's like not staged. And she's like, "Oh, honey," and she's talking to this person you can't see, but who's coming to collect her. And so there's all that stuff happens too. Fear not, Jesus. So the thing that Jesus said the most was fear not. All the time. Fear not. Don't be afraid. Don't worry about this. Be cool. It's chill. And I talk a lot about Jesus because he's the guy I studied the most, but I want to make sure that your audience understands that I'm widely studied. Christianity is the historical cultural root of my life and my culture.
Yeah.
I'm not a Christian. I know a lot about it because I'm in pursuit of the same thing Jesus was in pursuit of, the
Yeah.
same thing that Rumi wanted in Hafez and Chuang Tzu and Guru Nanak and we're all in pursuit of the same thing. And I just want to make sure that people understand that for me and my studies, Christianity, I chose Christianity because it gave me a common language with which to speak about the unspeakable in my cultural context.
Mm-hmm.
And so I continued to read in it. I just finished a book by this guy named Bart Ehrman, who's a professor. I think he's at the University of North Carolina, maybe. I've taken a lot of his classes, not as listening to them on tape, audio.
Right.
But anyway, it's ancient gospels. The origin of Christianity is not what people think it is.
Mm-hmm. There's such a stigma with talking about, well, death. Nobody wants, like we were talking about before this, nobody wants to talk about death. Nobody wants to talk about this. But there's this whole other side of it that you saw. I mean, that you've recognized. It's this something within inside ourselves, right? That we can connect to through meditation. I mean, you've had these out-of-body experiences, you've had near-death experiences. I get a lot of people who also say, with everything that I post, and they say, "Oh, it's just DMT," So you've heard that too.
Oh yeah, a million times.
And I just, like you said, people, I'm guessing, are just, they're going to experience it for themselves at some point, and they'll know. But I have to argue that people who have gone through experiences like yours would not say that it's just some DMT trip or something, or the brain shutting down.
Well, there are major scientific studies going on to determine exactly what consciousness is, and a lot of them have to do with near-death experience. And so I'm in favor of science. Everything around me is technology. Like science made this, science made that, science made these, science made that. So, and I like science, and I'm in support of brain science in particular, consciousness studies. And there are real scientific studies, not pseudoscience, but verifiable, peer-reviewed scientific experiments going on. Some of them are kind of more like public health empirical studies. Some are more like Samparnia, wiring up the brain during death, the AWARE studies. I'm all for the finding out of how it works, because from my point of view, there must be some sort of physiological interaction of the quantum realm where my soul inhabits my body, and I know that. So there's some my physical experience of the prana energy. It's a physical experience. It's not like I'm imagining this thing. People feel it from me. People have been feeling it from me and I feel it from them. It's not the thing itself. There's somehow my physicality has the capacity to feel this energy. And the energy itself, what I'm feeling, isn't the thing itself. It's an approximation of it because it's filtered through my body feeling. So there's somehow this interaction going on. And I want to know what it is. I want to know what it is. And I think that if science can show that near-death experience is a reality scientifically, then all of the people who are skeptics, naysayers, It's going to be hard to argue against. Not that it makes any difference. It doesn't make any difference because everybody's going to die and they're all going to find out for themselves. So it's like, okay, you can have that point of view. That's fine. I'm not going to argue with you. It's like I don't argue with evangelical fundamentalist Christians. I don't see any point. Or evangelical fundamentalist Muslims or evangelical fundamentalist Hasids. It doesn't, what's the point?
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's on their own path. And, if that's what speaks, true to them, then it's, making their life better. And that's great. One of the things you said, I keep coming back to it. You really focus on this being aware, like this internal awareness that we have this piece of that divinity inside ourselves, and it's our true nature. So, and you connect with, you're able to, you do that practice of meditation. Is that something that if people were like, I want to do that, I want to connect, how we can connect with that, just that quieting in the mind? Is it headphones, like guided meditations, or is it just a quiet place?
You could start with guided meditations as like training wheels on your bicycle. So you don't fall off. And so they're very helpful. Music, people meditate when they go sit by the ocean or by a stream, and they just listening. The practice of sitting by a stream and just listening to the sound of the babble of the water, just sitting by the ocean, listening to the roar, not thinking thoughts, just concentrating on listening. That's a form of meditation. You can meditate by staring at a candle flame, by only seeing that and not letting, as thoughts intrude, refocusing yourself to where your eye is looking or your ear is hearing. That can work with the guided meditations. All of that for me is training. The practice that I was introduced to back in '77 and then continued to study other forms and adopted something called Kriya Yoga from the Yoga Sutras back in 1980. The use of a mantra, I have a singular mantra, singular prayer practice that I use over, and I've said it 1 million times probably in my head, because the more I use one language, the more it burns into my subconscious. The more it burns into my subconscious, the easier it is for me to call it up and focus on it when I'm in my breath practice. And so I use my breath and my chant in tandem together, and I breathe into expand my belly with a focus on my chant, and then I breathe up my spine, saying it again in my head, and just repeat this 10,000 times. And as your mind wanders, just return to your mantra, your prayer. And I found that using a singular one, which I got advice for decades and decades ago, turned out to be great advice for me, because that singular one will then drop away. It's easier for that to drop away and left with just breath. So one can then just focus on the breath. And then what can happen is if you learn to place your mind in your chakras and not worry about what they are, what colors they are, what they mean, how they work, all that stuff, just rest your mind or below your belly button or in your root chakra. Just rest your mind there with your breath and your chant. Eventually what happens is that because your mind is quieted, because your egoic self is not describing it to you or detaching yourself from your body, you get access to your subtle body, your soul self, and then the soul energy, the inner guru, begins to be the guide to the interior life. And that's one of the things I learned from Patanjali and the Yoga Sutras, which was essential learning for me when I was very young, because I found quickly that I did not fit in the Christian church, and I needed to find a way to reattach myself to, or increase my expansive attachment to the divine being. And by doing that, I brought heaven to myself. I didn't make it happen. It's not like I'm grasping for this. The entire practice is quieting, not grasping, not having the desire for the thing itself. I hold, the light inside my heart, and I use the divine energy as my focal point for my practice, but I'm not grasping at it. I don't want it. What I want is the quietening of my own attachment, the language of my mind telling me things. When that becomes quiet, then the light naturally emerges, and then it becomes the teacher itself. And the more you practice, the more that becomes the lead. To which I will add that in the Christian monastic tradition, there are hermits. People go off, and gurus are like that too. But at least in the Christian tradition and the Buddhist tradition, and as far as I know, there are no actual real hermits who live 100% by themselves. They're always attached to a community of some sort, especially in the Western monastic tradition, because you can go crazy. So there is a thing of, and the line between mysticism and insanity is sometimes pretty thin. And so it's helpful to have a community of people that you could bounce things off of, or at least remain connected to, so that you don't go so far off as you can't have enough egoic attachment to the world that you can feed yourself, for instance.
Right. There's a tough question that I get asked a lot, and I wanted to ask you, because you described you had this life review where you were judging yourself, but you're experiencing it from your point of view, their point of view. But a lot of people who've had NDEs talk about, they realize that there's no such thing as hell, and they just don't. They feel like, that they're forgiven, that this is an all-loving place, no matter all the bad things that they've done. So then a lot of people get really angry and upset and mad, and I can feel for them, because of, maybe somebody did something to you or your family, or I don't know. People have gone through horrible things. They want to know that there's a special place for those bad people to go, and that they don't get to go to this wonderful place. So I get asked a lot, so that just means that all of these, murderers and, people who have done, crimes and things, that they just get to go to the same place that everybody else does. And I don't know how to answer that exactly. I haven't experienced an NDE. Do you have any insight on answering that? I'm not here to really make anybody upset, because I don't know the answers. Well, what do you think about that?
I have a lot of thoughts about it. One, I work with murderers every day, people of sexual crimes, people who have done heinous things. And I think of this explanation that was one way to think about this is, did Hitler go to hell? If anybody deserved it, Stalin, Pol Pot, Adolf Hitler. I heard it explained as so much self-identity, so much attachment to self, so much narcissistic, egoic, malignant meanness, sociological, psychopathic, well, first of all, there's no body on the other side. So anything that's DNA based, it doesn't exist. But when I was going through the hell of my own making, my identifying with the pain that I gave was real, but also it was superseded by the original nature of my self's acceptance of the unconditional oceanic tidal wave size of divine love that was on offer. And all I had to do was accept it. People who want retribution, vengeance, one of the things that is often ignored in the New Testament is that one of the sins is anger and rage. And those things are very self-attaching. And I need the audience to understand that I'm not some mamby-pamby person, okay? I've faced bullies. I've been shot at. I've been held at gunpoint. I've been in victim situations. I'm a victim of a violent crime myself. I worked with the governor. I was a gubernatorially appointee on the domestic homicide review panel for the state, reviewing heinous crimes for years. So I'm not unexposed to the deprivation of human terror to other people. but it's not up to us. The desire for vengeance darkens your own heart. It darkens your own heart and prevents the light space inside of you. And people think about it as righteous anger. And I have definitely defended the defenseless. I mean, that's why I was in half the situations I was in and placed in danger, because I was standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves, or needed somebody to stand by them. But to hate the other person is the darkness in your own heart. And I understand what it's like to be wounded. I understand what it's like to be hurt and have those thoughts of, well, I hope they don't get that. I think that there's a fundamental misunderstanding on several levels. One, that every single human being is broken. We talked about this before, as we were talking about the lesser nature of this universe. There is no human being that exists who has not done something bad, whatever that is, and probably more than one thing. And by bad, I mean hurting another unjustly, or even that's weird, unjustly. There's this, when I was dead during my life review, I saw this radical equality of humanity. I saw all of humanity, and I saw the rapists and the murderers and the genocidal people. I saw the saints and the children who've done nothing. And we were all on the singular plane, like this thin, the edge of the piece of paper here, that thin. We were all on, and all the space around up above was the infinity of love. And so there was this radical equality of our brokenness, and there was this radical equality of the divine love inside us. And so these two things are in connection. And so people who want vengeance, I work in the corrections justice system. I see that there are men who, because I work in a men's prison, I see that there are men who committed heinous, violent crimes who don't even admit that that's what happened. They're in denial. I see men who have done heinous, violent crimes who have transformed themselves and deserve mercy. I had an opportunity a couple weeks ago. I held a man's entire future in the palm of my hand, and I won't get into the details because I'm not allowed to. Sure. But I recognized that the punishment for the offense was so radically disproportionate that his entire future was destroyed. And I asked for mercy. He's a violent assaulter. He almost murdered this person, and it was violently awful. It was a long time ago, but I asked for mercy for him, and they gave him mercy. It doesn't mean I think he should be out on the streets. So I just want the audience to understand that I'm not like hug a thug. Okay, that's yeah. I work in a hug a thug prison, and I'm so glad to be there. And I have hugged these guys because many of them actually have light inside them that's radiant out, and they are leaders in the prison as a result. So, but in this world, we have laws and we have violence, and we need to help those people, help everyone else be safe. And so that's where I stand in the world. But in heaven, who are you to judge? Who are you to judge? You're going to discover that your crimes are on that edge of piece of paper too. And the divine love and mercy and forgiveness is so accessible as to be, at least in my experience, unavoidable. I couldn't not choose it. Maybe there are people out there who have committed such crimes, or rather have such darkened attachment to their egoic self that they can't see the light. I don't know. Maybe that's true. But even my friends, NDE friends who went through hell and didn't see the light on the other side, they went through some kind of experience of hell, came back transformed. My experience of hell on the other side is that I made it, and it was not eternal. It was a cleansing for me. In order to be entered into the fullness of the expansive state of union with a capital U, I could not have any more weights attached to myself that I had. I think of Marley and Scrooge. And Marley, these chains I forged link by link in my life, whatever the quote is. I made these chains and I'm condemned. And I made all the chains. I made all the links. And once I was freed from them, I was freed from them. I can't help but see, and this was a problem for me for a very long time. I can't help but see the light inside of every single person that I meet. Doesn't matter who they are. Doesn't matter what they've done. Doesn't matter how they're treating me. Doesn't matter how they're treating somebody else. I can't help but see it. So I see the light and I see the meanness at the same time. I don't have it in my heart to condemn people to a hell on the other side because, man, I went through one and I might go through another. I don't know. Not everybody's experience on the other side is the same. The light's the same. The love's the same. For me, I needed to go through that in order to at least it's shaped me as I live in the world. As I live my life, I live my life through the lens of my own recognition of my own flawed nature and my own divine nature simultaneously.
Wonderful. Thank you for answering that in such a wonderful way. You continue to do these interviews, and talk, about your story, and I'm sure it's helped so many people. Is there a reason that drives you to do it?
I came back with a compulsion to share. I seriously and significantly sealed my own lips for many decades. I was unwilling to share because I didn't have the language. I didn't have enough social capital. I've spent my life creating social capital so that when I finally did come out, I couldn't be just brushed off as some kook. For the life that I've lived, I'm highly accomplished. And I did that on purpose so that when I finally was able to have the language with which to speak about this, and to me, it's not, the language is a carrier for the presence. And when I was in television, this is what I discovered, that through the lens, the divine energy can be carried through voice and presence. And I didn't know that was true until I was on television and people started writing into the station, what's going on here? And so then I realized that through the lens and through the microphone, the divine presence can be spread in the same way that it can be spread through, the organ symphonies of Bach or the paintings of Cézanne or the poetry of Rumi. And so I have a compulsion. I'm here to help people understand their interior nature, not to teach them, but to help. I want to help show it to them, because if you can see it for yourself, then you don't need me anymore. I'm not here to be a leader. I'm not here to be anybody's guru. I'm here to help you find the thing that's already inside yourself. And because I'm passing through here, I'm not a permanent structure. I'm a totally temporary body. But I have a compulsion, and I'm going to continue as long as I can. That's why I do it.
Well,
I'm passing through.
You're making huge waves, and we know those ripple out and cause a lot of goodness out there. So if people want to connect with you, I know you have a website and
peterpanagore.love.
peterpanagore.love. And I'll include this in the show notes. Your 2 books, which would be a great way for people to actually dive into your story and hear, all the details about your, near-death experience and everything around that. Heaven is Beautiful. Is that your second one?
That became an Audible bestseller. My first one was a collection of a small selection of my 1,700 scripts that I wrote for TV. I was a spiritual, inspirational storyteller on TV. That's what I did.
I'm going to see if I can find some of those clips. They've got to be somewhere.
There are very few of them. And the reason there are very few of them is because I was working through a television station, and they use their music from the TV station that has at the last I knew, $100,000 a year fee for access to the music. which,
Oh, yeah.
I don't have 100 grand that I
No,
could, like,
no.
so I can't air any of them. There are a dozen of them or so, or maybe 75 or 80 that I was working under a grant from a New York City organization that has our own music underneath it. So those are around somewhere, probably on a website, probably on YouTube. But I had to take down the YouTube. I had a YouTube channel during my TV days, but I had to take it down because of proprietary music.
Right. Right. Well, and so if people want to connect with you, they can get on
Dot
peterpanagore.love
love. Hmm.
and they can find your books there, also on Amazon as well. And then Audible, you said that Heaven is Beautiful, that book is on Audible.
Bestseller.
And I love Audible. I
Me
I
too.
just love listening in the car. It's
Hmm.
for those of us with busy lives, it's such a great way to just when you don't have time to sit down and read a book.
Hmm.
Yeah, listening while you drive or just wherever, I guess, on the beach or
Doing the
wherever.
dishes.
Yeah, right, exactly. Get yourself some earbuds or, headphones or whatever. And then you've got a book coming out soon, right? That we
Well,
can
I don't know about soon, but my publisher
sometime.
has 9 chapters finished, polished, super finished, ready for publication. But it's out of a 22 chapter book, and so he's got them now. And I hope to be speaking with him in the next month about what he wants to do with it. And it's up to my agent and my
Yeah.
publisher. We'll see how that all goes. But yeah, that's underway. And I want to mention that at my website, peterpanagore.love, I still have counseling hours. Before I took the prison position, I was running a global sized counseling service for people who have had near death experiences, people who have had spiritually transformative experiences, but also people who are seeking. I have 40 years of pastoral counseling experience and intuitive, energetic capacities, and deal a lot with suicidality, all sorts of things. And you can see it on my website. Been doing it a long time. Happy to help people.
Wow. That's wonderful. So people can reach out to you for counseling services through your website. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that. Is there anything that you had that you'd like to add before we leave?
You don't need to meditate. It's helpful, but you can try to, if a person's in the pursuit of the divine. I did want to bring something up, and that
Yeah.
is that study is important. Feeding your head is important, but you're not going to gain the divine through knowledge. That's not where it is. There is a such thing as jnana yoga, where the path of knowledge to yoga, but it's an energy form of not, and that's why all the religions around the world, the mystical aspects of all these religions, have meditative practices, because it's in the meditative practice where the divine is encountered. So you can go to all the workshops, you can read all the books, and I read all the time. Okay, I am extraordinarily well read and studied, but I don't fool myself into thinking that that's going to help me find the thing that can't be named. It helps me communicate. It helps me understand. Helps me think. But there was this guy named Brother Lawrence who was a brother in a monastery, been a footman, and he was illiterate. And when his lord died, he went into the monastery and he worked in the kitchen, scrubbing pots. Turns out he was the most spiritual person in the place, practicing the presence of God. It had nothing to do with his education. It had to do with practicing the presence. And that's what meditation is. But it doesn't have to be meditation. You can just love the people you love. And the more you love the people you love, and the more you let them love you, the more light lives inside you.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing today with us. It's been wonderful to hear your insights. I hope people will reach out to you and also read your book or listen on Audible so they can hear more of these beautiful insights that you share. So thank you again, Peter.
Thank you, Katie.